Content warnings for this episode include mental health, misgendering, racism, childhood trauma, and dysphoria. Genderful would like to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples and unceded lands that the producers, hosts, and guests live and have dwelt upon. Today, we honor the Coast Salish,
La Gran Chichimeca.
We honor the elders, the human, plant, and animal ancestors of these lands, and celebrate the living descendants of these peoples. May all beings tend these lands for the goodness of the next 7 generations and beyond. Meowdy folks, welcome to Genderful, a talk show interviewing gender-diverse folks about their special interests.
The name of our show celebrates that gender expansiveness is wonderful.
Hi, I'm GenderMeowster, and my pronouns are they, them.
Hi, I'm Atlas of Phoenix, and my pronouns are also they, them. The focus of our show is to interview trans, non-binary, agender, and gender-diverse people regarding their special interests, passion projects, and resources for the gender-diverse community.
We want our audience to know that this show is hosted by 2 folks who also identify as non-binary, transmasculine, neurodivergent, and disabled, with the passion for telling trans stories.
We invite you to remember that we are whole people with robust lives, friendships, challenges, and successes. We love and are loved, and we are delighted to share these stories with you.
As always, we kindly remind our listeners that no person is a monolith of their identities. Your identities can change over time and are valid every step of the way. And if you think you're gender diverse, you are gender diverse. There are no social or medical prerequisites to be included in the community. Welcome to Genderful, episode 81. Oh my goodness. This week, our guest, Aquarius Funkk, they, them pronouns, is chatting with us about performance art and creative expression. Aquarius has been a friend of mine for a little while, and I'm so delighted to welcome them to Genderful. Welcome in, Aquarius.
Here, I'm excited.
We're here, we're queer, we do what we want.
Hopefully I don't have any lipstick on my teeth. Do I? No.
You look good, you look good. I see a lot of shades of blue happening right now.
I'm doing a lot of blue in my makeup lately.
Is that
Going with
is
it.
is there a deep reason for that?
I don't know. It started happening and I've just went with it. I always do a lot of like silver, but I've been but so often lately it's just been a lot of blue. So
It's so awesome. You look incredible, as always.
thank you.
You guys have such style. I'm always like, wow, Aquarius is so stylish.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Oh my gosh. Well, I like to ask people who I know have cats, how are your cats?
My cats are good. They were running around in the studio here a little while ago, and now they've, I don't know, made their way elsewhere. So I don't see a single one right now.
Yeah.
This had to be a part of the setup.
Yeah. They were like the setup.
I'm pretty
crew.
sure. Yep, no one's here right now. There was one on the table right behind my computer, but it's gone now. So maybe
That's
it'll be
awesome.
back later, likely.
Little feisty little beings, those cats.
Indeed.
Gosh, I just love cats so much. They're so funny. Okay, so I'm going to ask you one of the questions that I like to ask all of my guests. Maybe I'll even put it in a little Zoom chat so that you can see it in your brain at the same time. What are some things that you can trace back to your youth that indicated you might be gender diverse one day?
I love that question. Yeah. So when I look back on my childhood, I realize so many situations where I was trying to conform to what I thought a female assigned person should be. But I didn't really fit a lot of those things. I was kind of constantly teased for being masculine, boyish, tomboyish, having body hair. And just, yeah, kind of being a bit of a free spirit, I guess, maybe for lack of a better word. Being pretty much very different than the majority of people that I grew up with. Like, I was definitely the oddball. I grew up in Maine. I grew up in a rural town in Maine. Athens. Athens was where my elementary school was. I lived in the next little, not even really a town over. Brighton Plantation is what it was actually called.
Wow.
Kind of wild.
Yikes.
Yeah.
They haven't renamed that place?
I guess technically, my understanding of why it was called a plantation is because it's like one step below being an actual town. Like, it doesn't have its own post office, doesn't have its own, like, town structure. So anyway, I grew up there, very small town, one of like 5 Black people, I guess, 6 Black people in the area, in the immediate area. And I was like the weirdest one, it seems. I was definitely the most odd. I was probably like, I was definitely picked on a lot as a kid. And growing up as a Jehovah's Witness was also an element of that.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many little things that I look back on now, like, oh yeah, that's what that was. And like, there was always this energy in me that felt very expressive, and I didn't always have the outlets for that really felt like encompassing of who I felt like I was. And so I really kind of felt like I didn't belong. Pretty much the entirety of my childhood, teenage years, into my 20s even, I have just felt completely like an oddball, and that I didn't fit into the norms of what's expected from female assigned at birth people. Yeah. It's been an interesting ride to like get to the point where now I don't feel like I have to perform that identity.
Yeah. Oh man, I have so many questions. I'm so excited. I will add though, if any of the questions you don't want to answer, you don't have to. I hope that was already clear, and I will just say it explicitly so that you have extra permission to be like, I don't want to talk about that right now. And be like, okay.
I will tell you if that's the case.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
I've never had a guest bring up Jehovah's Witness, and I'm not going to spend too much time there, but I am curious, how many other families of color did you encounter in Jehovah's Witness? Like, in my limited experience with that community, it seems to be pretty white. So I'm surprised to hear that's part of your background. And I don't know, is there more of that going on that I'm just aware of? Because I just don't have that experience. I'm curious.
Yeah. There was not a lot of other Black folks or other people of color, I would say. It does tend to be, I think, a white dominated, primarily white cult religion. But my mom did join the religion when I was a baby. Like my mom grew up in Nantucket in Massachusetts. That's where my grandmother lived until she passed away as well. And so that's where my mom kind of found out about the religion. They came, knocked on the door like they do.
Yep.
And so I was in that since I was a baby, and I left when I was 14. I was in high school. My experience is, no, there was not a lot of Black people, especially in my area when we would go to the larger conventions that usually were in like Portland, Maine, or sometimes in Rhode Island, places like that. There would be definitely a few more people of color. but I would say it was definitely a primarily white group of people.
Yeah. So there's maybe like an extra layer of feeling like the odd one out because there's that piece too. Gosh, that's so interesting. Thank you for sharing about that and being willing to talk about it. That's cool. So
Yeah.
clearly you've gone from being that little young person to this effervescent, wondrous, gender bent being that you are today, living where you're living today. So my next question is, how has your relationship to gender evolved over time? How did you get from there to where you are now? Because clearly something happened in the middle.
Something happens. Things
Or
happen.
multiple things happened. Yeah.
Stuff went down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like that story is definitely intermingled with my creative story.
Mm.
And it's something that I didn't really discover about myself until I was in my 20s. Like, it wasn't really a question in my mind at all leading up to, like, oh, wait, I'm queer. And that's exciting to like realize all of a sudden, just kind of like, but I would say, like, I moved out of Central Maine when I was 20. I moved to Portland, Maine, and that was also where, like, my identity as a performer and as the person that I am now, outside of just performance, came into being. I Once I was able to go out, I turned 21. I started going to, like, different performance events, burlesque and drag and things like that, and, like, that always felt like my people. Like,
Mm.
but when people would ask me, "Are you gay?" I was like, "No," but, like, not like a hard no, not like no, but like, I don't think so. But and I mean, in all of my life leading up to that point, I had mostly had relationships with men and, like, some, I guess, encounters with women, and, like, kind of like maybe one or two queer people, but hadn't had like a relationship with anyone who wasn't a cisgender man, basically.
Mhm.
And then, like, I got to, let's see, when was I? 20, I was like 23, I guess. When I met my current partner, and, like, I met my partner and I was just like, I'm extremely attracted to this person.
Mhm.
And they're not like any person that I've ever really been attracted to. They're a very kind of butch, masculine, like dandy butch, trans masculine person. And that relationship, and, like, discovering that person in my life, and, like, having this new sort of view into queerness that they sort of opened me up to, I was like, oh, well, this makes sense now. This makes sense. This makes sense why I, like, want to do drag, or, like, why I feel more connected to, like, gender non-conforming people, or all of that. Like, it just started to make sense. Like, oh, I guess, yeah, I'm not straight. I'm not, no, hetero. I'm
Mhm.
something else. And, like, that has evolved over time as well. Like, I just identified as a queer woman for a while, and then, like, in the last 4 years, I would say, is when I started to really feel like, you know what, I feel and have always sort of had this energy of, like, being this duality energy, I guess, of kind of being a little androgynous, being a little bit, not conforming to the feminine rules, I guess. And often being seen as someone who was more masculine than I wanted to be at that time. Like, I didn't want to be perceived as masculine, because I was like, it makes, people make fun of me. People treat me weird. They, like, ask me if I'm a man, and it was so uncomfortable for a while. And then I've started to be like, I'm past that. I'm past, like, feeling uncomfortable about it. And it's when I can make it a moment to educate someone, then I will. If I can't, then I don't. But yeah, in the last 4 years is I've made this transition to really letting people know and being really confident and comfortable in my non-binary gender non-conforming self.
I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad that you became who you are too.
Right.
Like
Same.
like personally, it's so cool to see you like be this being that you are. You just took a sip of your coffee. Would you like to tell us about the tattoos on your forearms?
Oh,
Is
my
that
tattoos.
is that a fun thing to share?
So these, let's see if you can see. This is the better way to see them, I guess.
Nice.
How do I?
There you go.
So these are
Fancy.
Adinkra symbols. They're from Ghana. Oh my God, my brain, I'm terrible at this. I need to like do flashcards so that I can remember all the meanings because because I live in Mexico, I'm also thinking about them in Spanish sometimes and then in English.
Yeah.
And
So
then I
explaining
like
it in English is like,
my brain goes all these different places. But yeah, I'm
multilingual
very
thoughts.
excited about these because I feel like they're my sort of protection now. Like the ones I can, I'll just name a few off the top. This one is the wisdom knot. This one is in endurance and resourcefulness, thinking ahead. What is this one? This one might be creativity, I think. Yeah, creativity. I think this one is, I'm getting them, this one and this one mixed up, I think. This one is destiny. I know that. I have to I have to look at the paper I wrote with all of the meanings all of the time to remember.
It's all good. Well, and you
yeah.
and you got one of them more recently, right? Like within the last 2 months or something. So you had like just one sleeve for a while. Now you got both.
Yeah, this one I got in October. You can see it's a little bit lighter. And then this one I just got last month. Yeah, wonderful. I think so.
They're I see them as like protection spells almost. Like
that's how I feel about them for sure.
Like when I got my Leo tattoo, I actually had an opportunity to hold the black ink in my hands, like the container of it, and I charged it with energy before it was put in my skin.
I like that.
Yeah,
maybe I need to do that.
And it was my tattoo artist is this like queer trans person. And it was like the supermoon Maybon a couple years ago when all of those things were all at the same time. It was so magical. It was
love that.
So
my tattoo person is always also a queer trans person. I love that. I'm like, really, I mean, there's definitely like other tattoo artists that I like their work and would maybe get a piece, but I'm just really appreciative to have a queer trans tattoo artist.
Yeah.
Like anything, you can do anything that I need. I also have this one. This one, which is from a Basquiat painting. It's like a very small character in one of his paintings. You can almost like miss it maybe. Well, it's hard to miss the little things even in his paintings, but I was like, I need that character because it also sort of looks like Grace Jones to me. And so I was like, I need that. So my artist also did that one. And I keep getting ideas every time they tattoo me. Like, all right, I want a neck tattoo.
Nice. So let's talk more and switch topics towards performance art and creative expression. We're already talking about creative expression, but can you tell us more specifically about your work as an artist? What is your creative practice?
So primarily, if I have to just name one thing, it's performance art, but it encompasses so many different things. So like it's fun to talk about. It's hard to talk about when it's just like a brief moment. You have to tell someone like your elevator pitch. Like it's so I'm like, but yeah, so my performance art is there's kind of two sides to what I do. I started in cabaret, burlesque, drag, so doing more like stage performance and doing different numbers that I've created as like either solo pieces, or I've done a couple like group pieces. So that's like one element that's a lot more like, perform at pride events or clubs or things like that. And it fits really well into that. And I've been able to have a lot of fun and really explore like gender expression and creative expression that's like I'll do one of my favorite numbers to do is I like to do mashups or medleys of different artists, and Prince and Grace Jones are my two favorites to perform to.
Nice.
So I have this song, this performance I do where I use a Grace Jones song called "I Need a Man," and then I start in like a dress, and in the middle of the performance, like I change into a suit. So it's kind of like a play on like I need a man, but I'll be the I'll be the man that I need. And then it goes into this other song by Prince that was off one of his last albums before he died. It was like he did some really interesting stuff right before he died, but it's this album. I can't remember the name of the album. Anyway, the song is called Funk and Roll. And it's just like he was going kind of back to rock and roll a little bit, but really, Prince funk style. So it goes into that song, and then I kind of like play up the masculine, but Prince masculine, peacock masculine sort of character.
Yeah, totally.
So I get to have a lot of fun with that and playing with gender in a way that's like very performative and very like, costume oriented and kind of these small windows, these small pockets of time, but very in your face and exciting. And I also incorporate a lot of Vogue into my performance work. I've been voguing for quite a few years now. So that ends up as like an element in a lot of those performances. And then so the other side of what I do is a lot more experimental. I work with a lot of different performance artists that do very sort of radical experimental kinds of work, more long-term, like not long-term, durational performance work. So something that you would watch over a period of time. Some artists I know go, hours long, long times, 4 hours, 8 hours. I don't do so well with the longer times, but basically I get to kind of play with concepts in a bit more explorative way.
Yeah.
And it's an opportunity to give people a little bit different glimpse into, the psyche of me or whoever I'm working with. I like to do a lot of collaborative work, but I also will do like video, kind of produce my own video, short films, basically, performance videos. And really like that, this element of performance, it allows me to really explore my own like deeply held thoughts, ideas, feelings, and come up with different stagings and scenes and scenarios that help people to kind of really come away with something like, it's very intangible. That's the part, the thing about performance art is like, it's not a painting, it's not a object really. Sometimes, you can incorporate some level of audience participation or something people can take away with them that's a physical object. But
Yeah,
it's really about, getting people to ask questions, have discussion, think about something from another perspective, and like really deeply think about it instead of just, like a passing thought, I guess.
yeah. I think so. I just dropped the link to your website in the chat. You have some of your performances on your website.
I do. I have a mix of everything. I think on that link, the Norby link, I have one of my like favorite performance films that I did a couple years ago. Like this was a pandemic performance situation. I was in a workshop that normally they do in-person workshops, this particular group, and they had to kind of pivot. They wanted to try something different. They only did this one virtual workshop, which I actually loved. But basically I created that video that's on my link in bio link, the Norby link, as like the final assignment for that workshop. Mostly produced it myself, with the exception of one scene in there. I needed some help because I was sort of entangled and wouldn't
You're a
have
bit
been
tied
able
up
to
at the time.
Yeah, exactly. Had like this whole fabric situation, and I wanted it to be attached and tied to the wall, so I couldn't like get in and out of it. So I needed some help. And thankfully, actually, a performance colleague was there. Where I was living in Puerto Vallarta at the time I made that video. So he helped me. But yeah, you can definitely see some of my performance videos. I believe my Vimeo is linked, or you can go straight to my website and see some of the videos there through to my Vimeo. So from there.
Can you tell us more about the Interplanetary Extraordinary Manifesto?
Yes, this is a thing that it just came to me like a download. Like it just was like, here you go. And I do want to refresh it, actually, because I wrote it a long time ago, and I you know, manifestos are meant to evolve.
Totally.
And I want to make it a little more dynamic in some different ways. I've had some ideas. You've actually given me a couple ideas. So that particular manifesto, you did. You gave me an idea of how I can make it a little more dynamic. So try to do
friendship
that
is magic.
this year. Indeed.
That's awesome.
Let's see. The manifesto came about, like, I really just was like inspired, I think, specifically by this one performance artist that I can kind of consider like my performance padre. His name is Guillermo Gomez Pena. He is the founder of a troupe called La Pocha Nostra, which is actually the troupe that did the workshop I was just talking about a moment ago. They're amazing. I've worked with them so much, and they've been so inspirational to me since like moving to Mexico and really getting into performance art in a new way. So the manifesto kind of came about because I'm pretty sure I had been looking at his website, Guillermo's website, and he has a manifesto. I'm like, I want to have a manifesto.
Yeah, I love that.
I need a manifesto. And I had come up, I can't remember when I came up with the Interplanetary Extraordinary. And actually, I found a song that it says that in, I need to find it again because I couldn't, for whatever reason, I couldn't Shazam it or something. But it's like this old like funk or disco song that says Interplanetary Extraordinary. And I'm like, all right, I need that in my repertoire now. But anyway, that came out of somewhere. I can't remember the actual story where I came up with that. But I had it for a little bit, and then I was like, okay, I need to write a manifesto. And I basically, I don't remember if I actually wrote it in a document first. I don't think I did. I think I actually went directly into Canva and started laying out the pages, like putting designs and colors. And then I'm like, all right, this is what's going on this page. This is this page. And it just kind of came all in one night, I think.
Wow. This whole thing in one night.
I'm pretty sure, like, I probably went back and did some tweaks, but ultimately, like, the whole thing got laid out. Like, the structure of it came to me all in one day.
Chat, if you want to be clicking along and looking at it, I did drop the link here. It's sort of like a slide deck you can click through, and then it's got, I'm saying this for the people listening on the podcast, maybe you're driving and you can't look at it safely. and there's many wonderful words. The layout is very heavily features black, white, and I would say, what's this green color? What would you call that color?
Chartreuse.
Chartreuse. Yeah. Black, white, and chartreuse elements. And there are a few pictures of Aquarius doing various performance arts. And there's even, is that a GIF?
There's a
with
GIF
your
in there.
Fabulous mask situation.
I love that mask. I just pulled it out of storage the other day. I was like, yes, I still have it.
God. I have a lot of feelings about it. It's powerful and creepy at the same time.
Powerful and creepy. That's definitely a strong element of my aesthetic. Powerful, creepy, disarming.
Yes, disarming. Totally. I love it. Yes, and I will read the warning you have here at the bottom. The site does contain images not suitable for viewers under the age of 18. Viewer
Indeed.
discretion is advised. There's a reason I'm not putting it on the screen for us to look at together. It's transcendent art. My goodness. Yeah. It's so fun and cool. I sure have wandered really far away from the questions I was supposed to be asking.
That's okay. These things take a life of their own.
They do. Would you like to talk more about what kind of topics you explore in your work?
Yeah, totally. So definitely my work is very heavily influenced by my identity. Black, American, Afrofuturist, queer, non-binary, gender non-conforming, spiritual. Consider myself not necessarily affiliated with any particular belief system, but very strongly oriented with the power of the universe and spiritual energy. And very about like liberation, very about social justice, civil rights, all of the things that us as queer people or anyone who is in a marginalized identity, people of the global majority, all of those things, all of the things that different people experience as being potentially part of a marginalized identity or someone whose identity is politicized. I really enjoy kind of taking things and turning them on their head. Like one of the other videos on my Vimeo and on my website is this project I did called A Letter to America from a Parallel Universe, I think is what I titled it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a really fun video to make. It's like a performance propaganda film or propaganda video is kind of how I look at it. And I'm kind of writing it as like I'm an alien or an android of some sort, maybe writing a letter to the United States, someone who's living in another country, but also as the interplanetary extraordinary. And that also came to me in a night. That was kind of like, it was amazing the way it flowed out because it was actually came in the same workshop I was talking about earlier. It was another one of the assignments. And I sort of actually merged we had a choice between assignments. I decided I was going to merge them. I like to be ridiculously ambitious or just like, I don't know, put things together in that way. Mm-hmm. So that idea also came to me in like a night and I just wrote it all out. And then I recorded the video either the next day or the day after that and gave myself a little teleprompter. Nice. And I'm like, how am I going to read this teleprompter without obviously reading the teleprompter? Oh, put on your sunglasses that look like pixels. And like, nice. It's like giving a queer Men in Black vibe was kind of how I.
Yes.
So yeah, that was a really fun video to make and just kind of like.
Instead of Men in Black, it's Queer in Black.
Queer in Black, exactly. Queers in Black.
Yes.
which is basically my aesthetic a lot of the time. Also black and white. It's like, what is the best thing I could wear for the green screen? Black and white.
Yeah. If you'd gone with
Um,
chartreuse lipstick, it would have matched your manifesto.
I know, yeah. I do actually have some
Do
chartreuse.
you have chartreuse lipstick?
I probably
Oh
need to
my
get a
God.
new one though. I think I've had it for too long. It's probably dry now. I haven't worn it in a
incredible.
while.
It didn't even occur to me that you would actually have that. That's so funny.
Indeed. I have all of the colors to match all of the things.
For Pride, do you do like rainbow lips and rainbow eyebrows?
I don't generally do rainbow.
a
Nothing
me
against
thing.
rainbow. I love rainbow. And occasionally I'll kind of like do a little rainbowy, rainbow-esque hologram, you know, it gives you rainbow. So
Mhm.
hologram is maybe as close as I get to doing like a full-on rainbow. But I just like to do like colors, like a monochrome sort of like blue on blue, or colors that contrast. Like one Pride I did my face. I like to do also like these angular things. So I'll do like a triangle shape on my face, or like different geometric shapes. This one
Yeah, that
Pride
also
I
helps
did.
you like dodge face recognition stuff.
I'm like, if I really need to, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I did this one look for Pride where I did like a blue face, but like I made it iridescent blue, so it kind of had the shimmer to it. And then I did the
Nice.
green. I'm gonna say I did the green lip. Yeah, I like to do, you know, like pops of contrast and things like that, and then like a lot of metallic.
Yeah, that's awesome. Bringing in the android metallicness.
Exactly.
So fun. I had to put my sunglasses
Now
on.
you have sunglasses. Oh, I should have gotten some sunglasses. I don't think I have any nearby.
I'm just feeling a little light sensitive today, so here we are.
Great.
It is rainbow, so they're stylish while being sensitive.
Cute.
So you've talked a bit about your letter from a parallel universe, and I'm wondering if you can share more about crossovers or your explorations with like the concept of a parallel universe and with being gender nonconforming or non-binary. Like it seems like there's a lot of this sort of like sideways, like, no, I'm not that, I'm over here now kind of thing going on. And yeah, I'm wondering if there's any more you want to say about that specifically. That sort of sidesteppy, like, no thanks, I'm over here.
No, pretty much, yeah, it's that. No thanks, I'm over here. Yeah, let's see. I feel like one of the things that makes, especially like the whole concept of Afrofuturism and how I like to use it is, yeah, to imagine a different future, and also to imagine this parallel universe, this parallel future where gender isn't, you know, it's accepted and normal and real for what people to be, whatever they are, whoever they are, however they are. And I think like when I see a lot of Afrofuturist artists, like, of course, you know, I don't always know their political stances deeply, some of them, but it feels to me like a very gender expansive type of space, because they're breaking a lot of the norms of, you know, what you should wear and what's considered, you know, fashionable and what's considered trendy, or, you know, I watched a video recently. I can't remember when the video was actually documented, but it was a video with George Clinton and some other Afrofuturist musicians. And he had this whole like face thing on, this like face fringe situation, and this big long jacket, and just like stuff that, like, you know, is not, to me, it's gender expansive, even though he probably doesn't identify as a gender expansive person. There is so much space in there for expression. And in my experience, like, it's just a very accepting space of what's different and what's being explored, and finding where you fit into that, finding what your identity is, finding how you want to, you know, do things differently. So I feel like for me, kind of creating these ideas of parallel universes, it's like, yeah, how do I sort of escape? I don't know if I want to use the word escape, but kind of. I mean, how do we escape from some of the things that are put upon us in this like capitalist, imperialist system? Um, and really, the the most enjoyable way to do it for me is to just lean into creativity. Um, and is that going to change things immediately? No, not necessarily. But the more people that, feel comfortable and see, maybe someone like me or someone who is doing that, the more that they can maybe find what's in themselves to create that space for themselves.
So I have one more question for you. How would you, Aquarius, define Afrofuturism?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Big question.
Afrofuturism. Woo! Woo!
just a light and easy question before I break.
Simple. Very basic.
It's like defining
Yes.
gender.
Right. Almost. Afrofuturism to me is it's an entire genre of creative expression. So film, books, movies, TV, writings, music. I don't know if I said that already. That really centers Black ideas and Black expression in a future context and imagines what, the future would look like if Black people were like really at the helm of that. It's a way to imagine a future that is not steeped in, racism, white supremacy, capitalism, imperialism, colonialism, sexism, gender, all of that. It's a way to imagine a future that, some of it may be, very imaginative and out there, not necessarily an actual thing that could be reality, but a lot of it and a lot of what a lot of Afrofuturists are doing is actually, there are real life applications for this. There are real ways to like create futures using technology that don't play into, the current structure of this system and society as it is now, where we're kind of going over the edge.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a way of creative thought and of like using technology and creativity and technology ultimately to imagine futures where Black people are, not subjugated and not having to endure racial violence and racism, all of this stuff. Yeah.
There is this wonderful tabletop role-playing game system that came out in the last year or two called Coyote and Crow. And I would say it's maybe indigenous futurism, because the way that the world is built is based on, what if the colonization never happened? And what if indigenous wisdom is what is leading us forward as peoples? And what does it look like for like indigenous people to have all of this like fancy tech and like, do all of those pieces like, so yeah, I think that these, by imagining it and dreaming it, that's how we start to make it a reality.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree.
I know I said we already had our last question, but I feel like I just want to tag one thing on as sort of a follow-up. Can you share about why you like to say Happy Black Futures Month instead of Black History Month? Like,
Yeah,
I think I
Black
know the
future.
answer personally, but I want you to share
Yeah.
with everybody else because it's cool. And multiple friends of color have been like, "What is this Black futures thing?" You keep saying to me, it's like, it's great.
Yeah. Well, so, there's always more that I need to learn and explore, but Black Futures is really this idea of like, yeah, I mean, Black history is important. It's super important. There's obviously mixed opinions on whether there should be a Black History Month, even within the Black community, actually. But for me, celebrating Black futures and talking about Black futures is like, no, we need to be looking forward. And there's so many things that Black people are doing right now that are future facing and that really do imagine new futures. So, like, when I say that, it's like, what, how do we honor the past while also looking ahead to create something that is going to be more equitable, to create something that's going to really celebrate us in a way that, sometimes these Black history things, like, they really be forgetting that they should have Black people leading whatever they're doing. And people will try to, like, honor Black history, but they're doing it from a lens that's like very limited and very like looking backward. So, it's of course important to honor where we came from. And I like what you just talked about with the Indigenous futures concept, because like, what if we were operating with that ancestral Indigenous wisdom instead of what we're operating with or what has been sort of the norm? And so I think like looking at Black futures is like, yeah, how do we take what our ancestors have done and weave it into the story for the next generation?
That is wonderful what you just shared. And I thank you for that. All right. So, Aquarius, who and what are the influences that inspired you to create? So, you've mentioned Prince and Grace Jones. And I don't know if there are additional influences or if you'd like to talk about them some more, but
Yeah, totally.
tell us about it.
So Prince and Grace Jones, just as a side note, I always tell people if they got together and had a baby, it would be me. I'm the performance love child of Prince and Grace Jones. But yeah, besides that, I'm incredibly inspired by Black musicians in general. Janelle Monáe is a person I'm incredibly inspired by.
Janelle Monáe is fantastic.
Right. I mean, just I wanted to be them for a while. I was like, can I be you? I hope one day maybe I get to go to a show, because that has not happened yet. Josephine Baker, icon. I think, of course, my mind goes blank with specific name. Oh, Sylvester is another huge influence for me. Just such a vibrant human being. That's what I want on tattooed on my other arm, so I have like kind of symmetry of face here, face here.
Yes, wonderful.
That one's coming. I am incredibly inspired by a lot of my friends who are artists. Just even, people who are doing different things than me, work in different mediums. Just spending time around my creative friends helps me feel more creative and more excited about my own projects. Like, collaboration is a huge motivator and huge thing that like keeps me excited about performance. I love to do my own stuff. Like, so many of those things that I've done on my videos and some of my more recent photography work is self-portraiture, and I like to produce my own videos from start to finish of doing the characters, doing the makeup, costuming, doing the actual recording of myself, and then doing the editing as well. But yeah, also mentioned him earlier, Guillermo Gomez Pena from La Pocha Nostra, and also his wife, Bellitronica. They're like huge creative influences for me, and kind of the whole troupe, La Pocha Nostra. Definitely worth checking out. They're very radical performance art troupe that has like really affirmed me in being this sort of weird, radical, strange, experimental artist who kind of has always felt like, at least, that I don't fit into any particular space. I fit into their little microcosm, their little mini-verse, microverse. I'm just influences. It doesn't have to be people, exactly. Just, nature, being outside, the world, water, the ocean, color, flowers. Really, I find inspiration and things that influence me to create. I can find them almost anywhere, I think. Like I love going to the flea markets here that they call them tianguis. The tianguis. You go and you just see all of this stuff, all of this like really interesting stuff, colorful stuff. And I'm always inspired by like sort of seemingly random objects. I always get ideas to create like different costumes or characters or performance concepts based on like these very sort of basic items, basic objects, found objects. I'm very influenced by trash. Like trash. I did a trash performance very recently where I hate throwing things away that are not like, things that you have to throw away. Like, packaging and things that are made of plastic, like all of this stuff that kind of comes when you buy a thing and you're like, what do I do with this? Like, this isn't really trash. So I'll save it either as like, I could use this as like a material to create something. So like, if I need to create a template for something, I can use this piece of plastic to cut out the shape I need. But also I've just had all of this stuff like that, like foam, whatever, plastic bags that I'm like, I can't bear to throw away. So I'm very influenced by this, like, how can I use trash, both as material for creating things and in a performance. I did a performance where I was like, it kind of taxonomized the trash. I organized it into like what type of material it was. And then I had this big, those like suits, the kind of painting white suits that they wear if they're doing airbrushing and things like that. I had a suit like that. And then at the end of the performance, I was putting all of the trash into the suit. It was very interesting. I'm going to try to like do it again and document it a little bit better. But anyway, I'm influenced by a lot of different things. There's this one idea I have, like, to kind of, there's all this whistleblowing happening, and I want to like create this image that just, there's like a million whistles coming out of my mouth. I don't know. There's just there's endless influences out there, I think, for me anyway.
I love that. I love that there's so much to pull from and benefit from. So how can performance be a tool for self-discovery for queer and trans people? I know on the show, so like my whole thing started as a tabletop channel like 2.5 years ago. And so I've had multiple guests on to talk about how tabletop role-playing games let people sort of try on genders and identities and all sorts of things before like claiming it personally for oneself. And sometimes people don't realize that's what they're doing. So I'm curious how the type of performance that you do could maybe be used in a similar way for exploring self-discovery.
For me, I've been able to, both on the, the more like cabaret type performance and experimental performance, create and explore different personas. That sometimes might be a little bit more out there than like the everyday sort of persona I embody. But you have this creative license to be whoever you want to be at any moment. And normal everyday life doesn't necessarily allow you to do that without some sort of like, you know, I don't come back to reality type of moment. And the reality is like, oh, well, yeah, cool. I guess I have to kind of be somewhat in this collective, dream that we're all living in together. I have to fit into some level of that to exist.
Mm-hmm.
But when in performance, and especially, I mean, I've really gotten to explore this, of course, on my own, but especially in collaboration with other artists in different workshops and performances I've done, where we get to create our own microcosm of reality for those days that we're together. And you start to see some of the similarities and the differences. And also there's this way that the work that we do together, that perform the exercises and things that we do in the workshops will kind of expose the absurdity of the reality, like the reality that we all live in now. And we get to live in this other reality that we create in that time together that really just honors whatever and whoever and however we are showing up. So I get to, a lot of the performance work that I do is it's body oriented. So it's about listening to the body and what the body is telling you. And there's not necessarily a lot of conversation, especially in the workshops that I do a lot, is like, you're really listening to your own body and your partner and what their body is expressing to your body. And you get to really be in a different place of knowing and understanding. And there's full autonomy. There's a concept called radical tenderness that is used in a lot of the spaces I work in with other performance artists. I'm not sure that it was necessarily specifically coined by La Pocha Nostra, but they use this concept in their workshops when I work with them. And it's about consent. It's about checking in with the person. It's about really inviting in a level of kindness towards others that you would offer to yourself. And I kind of always try to operate in that way with myself in any collaboration. Just, radical tenderness. And it's also something I try to then bring into, day-to-day life, because sometimes, when people are not nice or not happy or not treating you right, it's like they need radical tenderness too. I guess all of that to say, like, with experimental performance especially, I've just been able to show up exactly how I want to show up in that moment, create whatever persona I want to create, try an idea, try something, like try binding my chest, or try wearing a different piece of clothing than I've worn before, or creating some different look than I've done before. And then that will translate into something I can take back into my life and help me feel into parts of my identity that maybe I didn't feel capable or able to do in a day-to-day situation.
Chad is getting really excited about radical tenderness.
I love that. Let me look at the chat. Radical tenderness.
And while you're pulling that up, something that when I'm listening to you talk about, kind of showing up and making this microcosm, and you have these experiences together, it reminds me of when I was a a partner dancer more regularly, and how some of my favorite dances were with people who were also like fairly skilled at dance, right? Like dancing with newbies is also fun in its own way, but there's this special thing that can happen when both of you are really experienced and you kind of know what's up. And like we were able to go off script. We were able to go beyond moves that have been taught in classes and find other ways of connecting and moving using like very, very core concepts of like connection and like how much pressure do you have? How do you communicate with your bodies about where you're trying to move and what you're trying to do? And we would trade lead and follow back and forth because that was sort of the realm that I wiggled in, was like gender neutral partner dance where you trade lead and follow back and forth. It's not, locked into the binary and locked into certain people do certain things overall or even over the course of one dance. And it was really powerful to be in this, like it was almost like we could have call and response in different parts of our bodies at the same time. Like maybe my arm was leading us this way, but then that my dance partner's feet were leading us this other way. So I was listening and speaking at the same time, and like we would flow and move together in these really beautiful ways that are so hard to put into words. And like from the outside, people maybe didn't realize that what was happening. So it was a performance for just us. Like it was like this like sacred private experience that only two people in the world knew about, in that moment. Yeah, it's,
Love that.
I don't know. It was really cool. So I love what you're saying about the ways that you all get to explore in your performances as well. It just reminded me of those experiences.
I love that. Yeah, a lot of it kind of ends up being this almost this form of, partner dance in a way, like the way that some of the exercises flow. Yeah, there's a language that's created that really only you and your partner know. And it becomes, almost like a sacred sort of discussion between two people without, words.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Chad is sort of saying collectively that they all love the idea of moving through the world with radical tenderness.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's definitely something, I encourage people to do their own research and reading on it and see what else you can find. And also define it for yourself.
I can say for me, I try to remember that when I'm interacting with someone, I'm not only getting that person and who they present out to the world, right? I'm not getting the mask that they wear in society only. I'm also getting the conversation they had with their partner that morning, their blood sugar level, how much chronic pain they may be experiencing in that moment. If they're in a hurry because there's some external pressure to be somewhere at a certain time, like all of these other stressors and components feed into how someone might be showing up in those moments. And so like assuming positive intent and doing my best to be understanding and gentle with people, even if I'm noticing I'm frustrated in myself, like my frustration is not their problem, actually. Like, my frustration is a me problem that I get to work on myself. Like, oh, I had some expectations that are, that this would go a certain way. That's on me. And so it's important to find those ways to be kind with each other, especially because so much of our experience of working or being or playing can be wrapped up in like the toxic communication habits and behaviors of folks. Like I can't tell you how many people have like work trauma from bad bosses.
Right.
And so then you go to collaborate and all their work trauma starts flaring and it's like, oh, okay. So it's something to sort of navigate, is like being accepting that people are going to show up and have those things going on. And not everyone has either had the opportunity or taken the time to do that internal work to kind of heal and address that trauma and maybe separate the past from the current and realize like, oh, just because this boss or this lover or this friend was harmful to me in these ways in the past doesn't mean this new person is also the same. Yeah, I don't know. Like Yeah, I appreciate what you're sharing about radical tenderness. We do have a question from the chat. Mirami is wondering, to jump back one question. You mentioned documentation. Mirami finds documentation of any art that Mir makes to be very difficult to stay on top of. Do you have any suggestions for doing better documentation?
Do I have any suggestions? It's definitely difficult to get all of it. I think because I am like kind of technically inclined, and I have, you know, a decent camera and et cetera, like I definitely tend to like to do a lot of stuff myself. But what I've also found is really helpful is like having a partner, having a core collaborator type of person who does maybe things that you don't do. So maybe does photography, videography, whatever. I don't necessarily have that person right now. And so it has been difficult. Like I actually have a ton of stuff that I just have captured and not edited, or ideas that I'm like, oh, I want to capture this and I don't know how, or like I've done performances where, you know, it's just lost the ephemeral spirits. I think what's worked for me is just kind of trying to broaden my network of people who do any kind of documentation work, videography, photography, etc. And then, yeah, sometimes you have to throw some money at it. Just sometimes easier said than done. Sometimes it's a matter of just like kind of, I know I've had like hangups or felt like I've had gaps in knowledge, I guess, of how to do certain things, especially with photography, that I've just had to be like, well, I'm pushing past it and I'm going to figure this out one way or another. And at least it's a learning experience, even if it doesn't come out perfectly. I have been very fortunate to work with a lot of photographers in the past. It was definitely a little bit difficult in the last 3 or 4 years because of pandemic and kind of being a little bit far away from a lot of my previous collaborators. But yeah, I feel like learning about whatever equipment you have, if it's a smartphone, like, you know, follow someone who talks about different smartphone techniques. And even if you don't use them all, you'll find something maybe that feels resonant for you if you're doing self-documentation. Yeah, it's definitely a thing that I have not mastered, I would say. It's hard. It's tricky. It's tricky. If you don't have sort of a collective or partner, sometimes it's very tricky.
Yeah. Mir is saying in the chat, oh yeah, gaps in knowledge is a big thing. It is indeed very tricky.
Yeah. I mean, gaps in knowledge and like, you know, equipment. There's so much equipment I would love to have that would make things so much easier.
Yeah.
Or maybe I just think they would make things so much easier. Maybe it would make it more complicated. I don't know. But I just try to do the best with what I've got and like create systems for myself to some extent. I'm trying to get better at creating systems for my own creative life that I repurpose from my work life. Notion is a tool that I use it's a project management tool where you can really customize it to what you need. And there's a ton of really great templates you can find that will kind of help you organize. Yeah, I'm seeing the chat. Yeah, forgetful brain. I'm very absent-minded in a lot of ways. Like, be like, yeah, I'm going to do that thing. You know, just literally, this is my notebook. I've started to go back to having digital, my digital sort of project management stuff in Notion, and then keeping track of the day-to-day in this notebook. And I'm using it like a bullet journal. Anyone is familiar with bullet journaling? I kind of just, you know, it's just keeping track of, you know, your to-dos essentially, with a system that is pretty simple. And then, yeah, kind of tracking larger workflows. I move that into my project management system. So yeah, any stuff like that, like people want to reach out and ask me more questions, feel free. I
Cool.
try
I think
to
you're.
help
I think
people
you're
as
in
much as
the.
possible.
I think you're in the Discord server, right? Are
I
you
am in the
open
Discord server.
to Discord DMs?
People can definitely DM me on Discord.
All right. So, folks, if you go to discord.gg/Meowster, that's the Discord server for this entire podcast community, Twitch stream community, etc., YouTube community, all of it. And Aquarius Funkk is in the server. You can add Aquarius if you would like.
You can. I am there.
It's very cool. Aquarius even answers Discord DMs. It's happened. It's real.
I do. I won't say I'm on top of it as much as other platforms, but I will definitely get back to you there.
That's okay. I think if someone's like hearing an offer of free help on a podcast, they should not expect immediate free help.
True.
Could be radically tender with your time needs.
Exactly. Exactly.
Aquarius, what is your favorite performance memory? Or you can pick more than one if one is too hard.
My goodness. Let's see. Favorite performance memory. Sometimes that's many things mixed into one. Let's say probably one of my favorite performance memories. It's kind of like a medley of performance memories, but up until the pandemic, I basically would go back to would go back to Maine, to Portland, and perform in like different pride events. So being able to go, home, quote unquote home, being able to go home and have people really appreciate my work and like know who I am, even though I don't know. Sometimes I feel like when I left in the beginning, when I moved from Maine, I was like, my performance career can't go any farther here, blah, blah, blah. And like, no one cares. That kind of like sort of self-defeating. All of that kind of silly thoughts, that kind of, permeate your brain when you're having imposter syndrome. But when I go back and perform in Maine, like I feel really appreciated. And I've gotten to perform for some pretty good sized audiences and like venues and Pride Festival events when I go home, and like it's just very affirming, I would say. It's my friends there who are performance artists, drag performers or other various types of performance, like they definitely include me, or they attempt to include me when they know I'm going to be coming back up that way. So yeah, that amalgamation of memories are very positive for me. Kind of being able to see the new young queer generation as well. Sometimes I feel like, sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not 20 something anymore. Those are the 20 something kids. Like that's what the young queer generation looks like now. Like there's the kids under 18. Here I am being able to, like, I don't know if I'm a positive role model, but here I am getting to share my art with people who hopefully are inspired by it ultimately.
You're just gonna be the Grace Jones for those queer kids.
Hopefully.
That's
my hope.
It's Anne Prince, right? It's a legacy thing. Like, I feel like when you're in it, it's hard to see the ways that we can be an inspiration or like a role model for people younger than us or less experienced than we are. Because every day, you and I get to live with our imposter syndrome or whatever else, right? Like we get to live with our own realities. And it's like, we don't experience ourselves the way that others experience us, for better and for worse. And so like you know, the people that we look up to, it's sometimes, for me at least, it's hard to imagine others looking at us the way that I look up to other people. But those
Mm,
people exist. Like, absolutely, people look up to us because we're making things, and people are like, wow, I want to be able to make things like that someday,
right.
you know? And
Yeah.
so we get to do it bravely and imperfectly and to the best of our ability. And um, us doing it at all gives permission for those coming behind us to do it too.
I feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely am sort of missing my, I don't know, missing my community from Maine and like wanting to kind of see how folks are doing because it has been a space where I have definitely been able to, I guess, yeah, have that experience and feel like um it's not like all just sort of going, going nowhere. um it's been difficult, I guess, during the span of the last 4 years, um a majority of which was pandemic, to feel connected to audiences and people in that way.
Mm,
um
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it is. It is. Well, and one thing that, listeners of this show and anyone else could do is when you see performers performing, find a way to tell them what a great job they did. Like, even if it's $1 or 5 or a comment somewhere or an email, like, you know, I can't explain how helpful it is to hear that whatever this creative screaming into the void that we both do is actually heard and received, especially when it's digital, when it's through the screen and I can't like see the audience, right? Like, at least when it was performing live, you could hear the audience's reactions. You could see their faces sitting in the chair. And now that it's like not always, but often can be on the computer or asynchronous, it's so hard to hear those reactions. And I don't know, it's part of the energy that helps me keep going is knowing that what I'm doing is making a difference in anyone else's life.
Yeah,
Yeah. So,
definitely.
and like the affirming words really help. The money so that I can keep paying the overhead so that the projects continue super helps. And it helps you with
Totally.
your projects in that way too, like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a way for folks to drop subscriptions if they want to, like on your website or anything?
um I On my link that's been shared in the chat, I believe I have, yeah, my Cash App is on there. I'm kind of working on what I want to do to be able to, like, provide some sort of, maybe, I mean, I have a Patreon, but I haven't used it in a long time and I need to revisit it really if I'm going to
Hmm.
use it, change it around. But yeah, I mean, Cash App is the way that you can monetarily support me at this moment.
Yeah,
And
we can fund
like,
your chartreuse lipstick purchase.
exactly. Yes, I can buy more lipstick.
More queerdos with chartreuse lipstick in the world, please. I would like more of that.
Yeah. Right now, like what I'm working on and what feels very alive for me right now is really launching the fashion line that I wanted to launch for a few years now. So I'm really devoting my time and energy to that this year. There's kind of some things moving around with like my work life, and so I can make the space for really moving in the direction of um, not letting my ideas just be ideas,
Yeah.
making the ideas truly a reality. It's like I've done it in certain scales, mostly a smaller scale, with the content I've created, the art I've created, or live performances. But I want to be able to share something that is a piece of me that people can actually really wear and engage with and interact with and feel connected to.
Yeah.
And I've done a little bit in the past, like making pieces that I've had the opportunity for other people to wear, to buy, or have. And now I really want to take it to a more consistent level and have that kind of be the thing that I'm doing. And in that, like, I want to create more fashion films, performance fashion films, like
Yeah.
using the skills I already have and the knowledge I have from being a model for so long. To do something that really highlights, accentuates, celebrates queer people, Black people, you know, people of color, people who are kind of, you know, the outliers, or the people who are not necessarily represented in mainstream culture or in the fashion industry. And it's nice to see that there are so many queer brands, you know, coming about, and, you know, gender neutral fashion. I think, you know, there's a lot of room for other voices and other expressions. And I will say a lot of the gender neutral fashion I see is like a little boring. It'll be like beige, and you're like, why a beige though? Like,
So what you're saying is we need like Afrofuturist, gender non-conforming, like punk fashion.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
very, you know, I won't say I've considered myself like a punk in the sense of like the genre of music, but it is very punk.
Sure.
Like it is very rebellious. It's very
maybe punk, but not punk rock.
I guess, yeah, totally. Like, no, it's definitely out there. It's definitely not, you know, not the palatable, the easy to digest, I would say. It's definitely something a little bit more boundary pushing for me.
Well, and I can tell you, as a person with a both fat and gender diverse body, it's hard to find clothes that fit my form and my gender identity, because like men's and women's clothes don't fit a body that's mid transition. And I also don't want to just wear something that's like super baggy, because that's the only thing that works out.
Right.
You know, like I would love a tailored thing that looks great on me, and short of commissioning wonderful, like disabled trans seamstresses that I know, which is still on my to-do list once the cash flow is there, you know, I don't know how to get access to that kind of clothing that, you know, expresses gender and fits the body. So I think there's definitely an ongoing need for that sort of piece to be in the world. I do know that there are some people, as you were talking about, working on either agender clothing or gender nonconforming sort of gender. The answer is no. No gender at all clothing.
Clothing does not have a gender.
Yeah, exactly. And how many of those businesses are owned by, you know, Black, Indigenous, people of color, trans people?
Right.
Like,
a smaller portion, I would say. I
can't
don't
tell
have the
you
exact numbers, but
I can't tell you how many of these clothing brands seem like they're owned by white lesbians, white cis lesbians. And it's like, I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying, like, let's get some more trans people making the clothes for the trans people, please.
Definitely.
So, yeah. Plus, you know, who doesn't love giving money to people of color? I do.
I do too. I love, you know,
I
love receiving it. I love giving it.
Yeah.
Like, take my money.
It's great. It's great. It's always my dream to just pay my friends more money than they asked me for whenever they're helping me with a thing.
That part too, yeah.
Sometimes my wallet disagrees with me, but in my mind, that's always my goal.
It's true.
Sometimes the budget is just like two flies flying out of my wallet. And I'm like, oh God.
That's definitely a meme. That's definitely I love it.
So my next question for you is sort of relating to the legacy pieces that we were talking about a minute ago. What advice or experience can you share with people who want to explore performance and creative expression? If you were talking to those young queer performers in Maine, like you were talking about, what advice would you share with them?
Let's see. So I would tell them that, for one, every every outlet or every way that you get to experience or learn about creativity is valid. Like, for example, I did not go to school for art. I did not go to school for performance. I have taken a lot of my real life experience, as well as like knowing that I always wanted to be a performer when I was younger. It was I wanted to be a singer, but that was but I would, be doing these little things in my room, like dance routines and all of this stuff. And it just, it made sense. And so I would say to young people, and the thing is, especially when you're young, you're not as far removed from those times in your life where you're like, yeah, this is just what I like to do when I was a kid, or when, didn't have the pressures of the world. What is that? What is the thing that you, when, time was not a thing, when, you had less cares maybe in your life, less responsibilities, what was the thing that you were drawn to? What did you really want to do? What did you spend your time doing? And maybe it's not the same exact thing you want to be doing now, but there's, I'm guessing, some essence of that is deeply true as far as, how you want to express yourself. At least that's the case for me. And, I'm not gonna pretend like I make a living doing performance and creative work, but it has influenced a lot of my other work and the things that I do to kind of make a living, and who I get to show up as, even in those situations. And I feel very fortunate because I don't have to work for, a company that constricts my identity. But I guess, like, how can you show up as like the the version of yourself that existed before the things, the world put things on you that aren't, and what does that look like, and how can you create a collective maybe of people who also want to explore those things. Who around you do you feel like safe around, that you could potentially collaborate with or explore different ideas with? Or maybe that person is, there's virtual communities you can join. I really think it's important to have people around you that encourage what you're doing. So if there are people around you that are not encouraging what you're doing, get rid of those people immediately. I would say to young people who are, wanting to get into performance, or even, I really didn't get into it until I was in my 20s. And my path of getting into it was very non-traditional. Lean into that. Lean into where you're being led by your intuition, by the wisdom of your own body, of yourself. Lean into a spiritual practice that helps you ground into that part of yourself. Look at, the lineage of things maybe in your heritage, your family, or otherwise your culture, that feel resonant and important to talk about and bring to the forefront. And don't feel like it has to be perfect, because it will not be. It will never be. But doing it, just like doing it, is really more than half the battle.
Yeah. So potent.
I'm glad.
Folks are talking in the chat about things that they did as kids.
And look at this.
Maybe delighted them, or like made them feel the most special or sparkly. And Mirami says that Mira would look in tide pools and ponds for all the things that live there. And Mira, I actually remember in the last year or so, you went on a walk and you went and visited the tide pools, maybe with family members or something, to go do some of that. I love shall we call it what is it? Relentless compassion? No, what is it? Kindness, radical
Radical
tenderness,
tenderness, yes.
relentless compassion, radical tenderness. I feel like there's something to be. There's some radical tenderness in tending the inner children like that,
Exactly, yeah.
like compassion for one's inner selves and younger selves, which is just beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, radical tenderness is just as important to offer to yourself as to others.
Mira
Maybe
says,
even more important.
I just always want to know what's around, and it does work its way into my creative work. Yeah, so like getting out and looking at nature.
Right.
There's a way that informs the creative work. I love it. Aquarius, is there anything that we missed about performance art and creative expression that you'd like to make sure that you get a chance to say today?
I can't think of anything specific. I feel like I feel like I've shared a lot of things that feel very alive and present for me. And
Wonderful.
maybe the only other thing I would say is like I definitely encourage everyone to try performance art at some point or another. Like you don't have to be performance art. Really, the only rules of performance art are having a body, using the body to, create some kind of dynamic or relationship with your audience, and using time, whatever amount of time you want to use. That's my iteration of it. There's obviously different practices and different performance pedagogy that different artists use. Again, feel free to hit me up if you want, other info, or things, that you can explore.
Does one find an audience? Do your cats count?
How does one find an audience? That is, sometimes I don't know the answer to that question.
That's fair.
This is often one of the reasons why I enjoy collaboration, because you get these different audiences from the different people you're collaborating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what we're doing right now.
Exactly. So basically, long story short, anyone can be a performance artist.
I love that. Okay, I have two questions that I like to ask my guests sort of at the end of the interview because it's fun. So can you share an experience with gender euphoria?
I can. I think I can anyway. It's sort of an interesting experience, I guess. That is a thing that happens to me in Mexico quite a bit. And I take it as like gender euphoria. Maybe it wouldn't feel that way to other folks, and I'm conscious of that. But depending on where I am, how I'm dressed, whatever, like I will constantly kind of get called different Mexican Spanish words. I mean, for boy. So like, it's kind of funny because to me, it's like, at least they see that part of me. Oh, I moved my screen, sorry. It's affirming because it's like, okay, they do that, like whoever they are, they see an aspect of me that like some people really don't see or choose not to see, or intentionally like won't acknowledge. So honestly, like it always just kind of like makes me chuckle in a good way. And then maybe the only other thing would just be like, if people compare me to Grace Jones, I'm like, thank you. Because honestly, like she was extremely, androgynous and very masculine presenting feminine person, woman, she's a woman. I believe she identifies as a woman, but she was just like sort of, and still is, literally just posted a photo shoot that she did the other day. She just has some new workout. Check it out. 74 years old and still is an icon for this like just very strong presence, feminine and masculine presence. So yeah, that's actually also gender affirming as well.
Yeah. So my last question is, what would you like to make sure folks know about your perspective on gender and non-binary or trans issues? If they only hear like 30 seconds of this 2-hour interview, what do you want to make sure people know about your opinions on gender?
My opinions on gender, I think that all genders are valid. All people know who they are, and that is allowed to change. You're not confused. You're not any of the things that people who don't understand try to put on you. And gender expression, gender identity, for me, they are things that really have allowed me to find a new truth and a new place of grounding that I deeply appreciate and deeply love to share with people. Yeah, I think that was probably 30 seconds.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, Aquarius, I'm so grateful you were here on the show today. Folks,
Thank you for inviting me.
just so you know, in case you haven't picked up on it yet, Aquarius Funkk is a non-binary Afrofuturist performance artist living in Mexico. They create live performances, videos, digital art, and wearable art. You can find out more at Aquarius Funkk with 2 Ks, Funkk, .norby, NORBY.live. Aquarius is also on Instagram using the handle at Aquarius Funkk, again with the 2 Ks at the end. Aquarius, would you like to ask your clouder query of the audience for the week?
Oh yes. Let me
Put it in
let me get
the
there.
chat for you.
What's in the chat? Yes. So I would love to know, how do you use creativity to celebrate your gender expression?
Nice.
That you can, there are so many things you can answer with. It is
No,
literally infinite.
It's so great.
It can
Infinite
be
answers.
anything.
It can be. Love that. Well, I look forward to hearing from our audience about that. Next week, we have Augie, aka Mrs. Gendered, on the show. And I don't remember the official topic we selected, but I will tell you there are definitely going to be discussions about possums and raccoons and trans art that's hand-drawn and lots of giggling and maybe VTubers. So that's next week's topic. Yeah, for community updates, I don't know what to say. So I'll share the Twitch updates after the outro. Thank you again for being here, Aquarius. This has been such a wonderful time to share together. And please give all of your cats the Clouders best.
I will. They will get a hug and a squeeze and a
Excellent. Yay.
from all of y'all.
Thanks, everybody. Genderful would like to thank our guest for being on this podcast. If you'd like to catch us live, join us on Mondays at twitch.tv/GenderMeowster. Show notes will appear in the edited version of the show on Fridays on both YouTube and podcasting platforms.
If you have a question you would like the host to answer, or are gender diverse and would like to request an interview, please send an email to genderfulpodcast@gmail.com or sign up via the website at genderfulpodcast.com.
As a gender diverse community, the Clouder wants to assure our listeners that we are prepared to moderate our spaces. You will get positive and negative feedback on these shows and topics, and we have a moderation team on our channels, socials, and Discord server ready to deal with this.
Please join our Discord server at discord.gg/Meowster to meet the community and get a regular digest of Solidarity resources. You can also support us with subscriptions on Patreon, following and reviewing us on your favorite podcasting platform, or engaging with our posts and content on social media at GenderfulPod and at GenderMeowster.
You could take a few moments to also rate the show. We will post any 5-star reviews on our socials, so get creative. Mention a special interest of your own, a project you're working on, or even say hi to your comfort person in your review. What power!
This show is made possible by volunteers, tips, and subscriptions. Shout out to the folks helping us coordinate guests, edit the podcast, moderate the live chat, and post on our socials.
Artist credit for Genderful. Genderful's theme song is called Hope by Free Range Megs, aka Soma. The GenderMeowster logo was designed by That's Barnaby and edited with consent by Transgriffin. Genderful's pre-show is wrangled by JuiceTex. Genderful is edited and mixed by Transgriffin and Alexis Vandam. Genderful's social media is managed by Queer to Help. Genderful is hosted by Atlas O Phoenix and GenderMeowster. Genderful is the intellectual property of GenderMeowster. All rights reserved.
Trans rights are human rights. That's right.